Today, our topic is how to have security in an insecure world. We're going to be looking at the history of the 7 churches of Revelation and God's guidance through history. I'm excited to share with you this topic to enable you to live confidently knowing that God is walking with you in your journey. Thank you, friend, for joining us. We're very happy that you can be with us. And before we begin, I'd like to ask a favor of you. We need your help to share the word. Please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Share this with your friends, your family, and even maybe your enemies. Comment. Share your thoughts and your perspective and your questions. We want to build a community to be able to share the experience and the discovery of the wonderful messages of Daniel and Revelation. And as we're looking at these studies, we're going to be looking today at the topic of how to have security in an insecure world. We're going to be looking at the history of the Christian churches symbolized by the 7 churches of Revelation. We're going to see God's guidance through the centuries. We're going to look at how God guides and directs on our individual lives. And I'm so glad that you've joined us for this. You know, truth is, and the discovery of Bible principles and teachings are progressive. I like to think of it this way, as like somebody walking up a staircase. Favorite Bible verse of mine is Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18. The path of a just person is like the light coming up in the morning. It gradually gets brighter and brighter every day. Well, step by step, we're taking progressive steps. So we're going to be studying this topic on the 7 churches in just a moment. But first of all, let's put the links together, the steps together of what we've looked at previously. Episode 1, we looked at prophecy reveals the unseen world. It's evidence that there is a God. It's evidence that we can trust the prophecies. It makes eternity real for us. And then in episode 2, the future of planet Earth, the second coming of Jesus and his kingdom of peace. What's the great destiny that is in Bible prophecy? Episode 3, the meta story of the Bible and the prophecies, the great battle, the great controversy that goes between good and evil. Episode 4, how to prepare for the end of the world. The purpose of prophecy is to reveal Jesus. And we looked at this great moral purpose that is given in the Bible for us to learn more and more about Jesus. And we're going to discover even more about that today and in our next episode. Episode 5, the issue of free moral choice based on God's commands. Worship, the future crisis that is revealed in Daniel and Revelation. And then episode 6, the pressure of social engineering. What happened in ancient Babylon? How is it applicable in principle for today? And how to keep our spiritual focus on the life of Jesus and the teachings of the Bible. Now, friend, maybe you're jumping in tonight for the first time, or you haven't had a chance to look at all the episodes before. I encourage you to go back and look at all of these episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. So we're going to get right into our subject here. And remember that the overarching purpose and theme of our studies is to learn, to love, and to live. Learn, which is a lifelong learning, progressive growth experience. And then love, we develop an advanced character development. Our lives are shaped by what we learn. And to become more compassionate, to be people of greater service in our communities, our homes, our families, and then to live with a growing awareness, a sensitivity to what is happening around us with greater meaning and fulfillment. So we're going to get right into our topic, how to have security in an insecure world. Now, before we begin, I just need to share a little bit. I have a bit of a infection in my throat, and so I'm tending to cough a lot. So if you see me reaching over and taking a throat lozenge and popping it into my mouth, I trust you'll understand as we get into this, because I want to be able to make sure you understand what I'm sharing personally. Before we begin, let's bow our heads and pray together. Our great God in heaven, thank you so much for the privilege we have of being able to study and share. And wherever these programs are being presented, Father, I just ask your special blessing on each person that we may fully understand the application of Bible prophecy in our lives today. Thank you for being the real teacher. We pray in your name. Amen. One of the most exciting topics in Bible prophecy, is the book of Daniel chapter 3, where there is the story told of the worship challenge of the great image, the great golden image of King Nebuchadnezzar, and how these three young men responded to it. It was the test of worship in ancient Babylon. And here you can see the magnificent image that portrays and represents what Nebuchadnezzar put there on the plains of Dura. Now, I want you to follow the biblical narrative. And friends, I hope that you will take the time to read these Bible texts for yourself. This is a Bible study, and we want you to study and to know these things for yourself too. So please don't hesitate. Not only just hesitate, I urge you to take your Bibles and read for yourself. Okay, Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and width 6 cubits. He set it up on the plains of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, okay, here's this great image. I want you to notice 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. Now, it probably doesn't count the width of the base or the foundation of it. But notice 66. In Revelation chapter 13, the mark of the beast is symbolized by 666. So we're seeing a direct parallel here in this image and this issue of worship. Now, what happened there on the plains of Dura? Daniel chapter 3. Then a herald cried aloud. He called everybody together. To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in the symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the golden image that the king Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now, my friends, this was an incredible challenge for these people. The Bible tells us, you can read it for yourself in chapter 3, that all of the delegates, the governors, the treasurers, the people, anybody who was anybody in the Babylonian Empire, from all over the empire, was called to come in for the dedication of this great feast. Now, interestingly enough, you'll notice that the image was all out of gold. In chapter 2, which we studied in a previous episode, the image was of different metals. It was gold, silver, brass, iron, and then iron and clay, and then a great stone comes. In contrast to that, we find Nebuchadnezzar saying, nope, my kingdom is going to last forever. And what does he do? He has this great golden image set up. And everybody is supposed to come in and worship it. And if you don't worship, you're going to end up in this huge burning fiery furnace. Now, friends, the Babylonians knew how to make ceramic bricks. In fact, I've had the privilege of going to the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. And you walk down this processional way. It is magnificent. It actually has the bricks from ancient Babylon. I'm in looking this up. Do you know it takes somewhere between 2100 to 2300 degrees Fahrenheit or 1150 to about 1260 degrees centigrade to glaze a brick? The Babylonians had it figured out. They knew how to make a hot furnace. They knew how to glaze brick. And so here's the situation. Nebuchadnezzar sets up this magnificent image, and then what does he say? Everybody is going to worship it. And if you don't, into the fire you go. Well, that's quite an incentive. Now, parallel that, friend, to what we've studied in a previous episode. Revelation chapter 13 tells us there's going to be this beast power, and it's going to make an image to the beast, okay? A form, a likeness, an idol. And now remember, these are symbols, they're prophetic cartoons, and everyone is going to be forced to worship it. That's what social engineering is all about, what we've studied in a previous episode. And so in our world today, the Bible is telling us that there are great spiritual forces that are coming together. And in the book of Daniel, we find that Daniel is telling us 7 stories, 7 prophecies. The prophecies tell us when and what, but the stories tell us the how. So what we're looking at here is one of the most important lessons that you and I need to keep in mind in our daily walk. Great image, everybody to worship. If you don't, into the fire you go. So what happens? Well, jumping ahead in the story, there were certain Jews whom, this is the report that came to Nebuchadnezzar, there are certain Jews whom you've set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods nor worship the gold image which you've set up. So here, in this great, huge dedication, in this magnificent image, these three men said, no, we're not going to do it. Now, friend, just for a moment, pause. Think what that means. The Bible tells us that these men were referred to as eunuchs. Now, in the Bible, a eunuch can refer to a man that has been castrated of his genital organs, but it also is a term that is used to refer to a high government official that was married. What the situation was for these men, we don't exactly know. But these men were, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the top administrative leaders for the entire province of Babylon, which was the capital province for the entire empire. These were the leaders, and these men refused to bow. Now, imagine with me for a moment the test that came along. Here's Shadrach. He hears the news, talks it over with his friends. He comes home, and his wife and children are there. His wife says to him, honey, you look rather worried. What's the problem? And Shadrach says, well, Nebuchadnezzar, the empire, is going to make a huge test of loyalty. And he's going to set up a massive image. And the word on the street is that he's calling for everybody to bow down and worship it. A few more days go by. And the news goes out. There's going to be this great symphony of music, and everybody's going to fall down to worship it. And Shadrach is scratching his head and saying, well, everybody's supposed to fall down and worship. That means they get right down on their knees and on their forearms. Maybe I can just figure out how I can squat and not have to do that. And so he's troubled. And then the news goes out. The decree is going to be that if you don't fall down and worship the image, you're going to go into the burning fiery furnace, and everything that you have is going to be destroyed. And Shadrach comes home, and his wife says to him, honey, what's the problem? Why are you so worried? Well, and he explains the situation. And she says to him, sweetheart, what about me? If you die, what's going to happen to me? And what about the children? What about our kids? You can imagine the tremendous turmoil and the struggle that came over that test. It wasn't just something that happened, snap of the fingers, and bingo, these guys responded the way they did. No, my friend, this was very, very much of a time elapsed test that happened in the minds of those people. So we go on. So they have the great congregation, great convention, and the image is set up. Thousands of people gather around. The orchestra has been practicing for months. They have the best music all arranged. And what happens? The music starts, and the herald shouts, fall down and worship. And everybody falls down and worship except three men. Except three. Wow. And then the report about their disloyalty and their refusal to bow goes back to King and their competitors, their fellow administrators who supposedly were more loyal to King Nebuchadnezzar than they were, go and report them to Nebuchadnezzar. And they say, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they come before Emperor Nebuchadnezzar, and he challenges them, and he says, don't you worship? They answered and said to the king, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. Now, what does that mean? It means they had thought it through. They knew about the test. They understood the implications. They knew what either bowing down or not bowing down meant. They had thought it through. And so they said, if that is the case, that our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. And then they said, but if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. So they said, either way, God, our God is stronger than any of the material forces that you might have, king. He has the capacity. Our God, the God of heaven, has the capacity to redeem us and to deliver us, to save us from this horrible experience. But if he doesn't, that's fine. But we will not. We will not worship your gods. We will not worship the images which you've set up. And so what happens? King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and he rose in haste. Well, I'm getting ahead of the story. The story is this, that Nebuchadnezzar said, into the fire you go. And his strongest, toughest soldiers bound them up with ropes, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar says, got even with them. Everybody knows now, if you don't worship me in the way I tell you to do, if you're not loyal to me and obedient to me, you're going to burn or off you with your head. It's either you serve because of love, because of favor, reward, or fear. And Nebuchadnezzar had called everybody together and said, either or. You either do it my way, or you're going to become charcoal and cinder. So he throws them into the furnace. And the Bible record says that the soldiers who threw them in, the flames were so hot that it killed those soldiers. So what happens? Nebuchadnezzar said, okay, I've taught the lesson, but then suddenly, what on earth? He was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, didn't we throw 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they answered and said to the king, true, O king. But he said, look, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Wow. These 3 men were thrown into the fire. They went in bound with their hands, ropes and such bound. The only thing that was actually destroyed by the fire was the ropes that bound them. But there, they were joined by the 4th person. And Nebuchadnezzar recognized him as the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. You see, friend, we're coming right to the heart of what we need to learn in this story. Remember, this is a prophetic, godly cartoon. It's a metaphor. Now, it really actually happened, but the Bible records this for us to teach us today how, where, how, who, when God actually deals with us, because we all are facing situations where loyalty to God or our own subjective, relative judgment is being used to support whatever decisions we make. And God is helping us to understand that we need to be making very solid decisions based on His Word. Okay, so let's go on. Then Nebuchadnezzar went to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth from the midst of the fire, and the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected. And the smell of the fire was not on them. They went into the fire bound. They came out bound, and there wasn't even the smell of smoke on their garments. Nothing was even singed in their eyebrows or their hair or anything. They were totally fireproofed. Wow, what an amazing story. But what is the lesson that is being given here? Nebuchadnezzar said, the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. And friend, you and I need to have a deep, profound reality that we are constantly surrounded by the influences and the protection of holy angels, and that Jesus is always with us. Jesus was in the midst of the fire with His people. Now, let's go on a little bit further. I want us to see another important lesson that comes from the 7 churches of Asia Minor. Remember, we're studying Daniel and Revelation. We've been looking at Daniel chapter 3. Now we're going to go to Revelation chapter 1, 2, and 3. And the Bible tells us in Revelation chapters 1, 2, and 3, there is a message, a prophetic message given to the 7 churches. These churches were Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Why that? Well, These were 7 very prominent trading centers and business centers in the ancient time of the Apostle John, in the time of Jesus. And this was the route of an ancient Roman trade route. Now, today, of course, we have internet. We have all the other devices of communication. We've got our phones and whatever. We don't think of it that way. But in ancient times, when they wanted to send out a letter for the general population, they would have a town crier or someone who is designated by the government or the governor, the army general, whoever, to go out, and they would go from center to center. And in medieval times, they called them the town crier. And they would go and they'd start off and they'd go their route. They'd stop in the particular town and call everybody together and give the message. Well, the book of Revelation, my friend, the last book of the Bible, was a circular letter. Circular letter in the sense that it was intended for all of these churches. So in this record, in the book of Revelation chapter 1 and 2, the story starts at Ephesus. Prominent seaport, very, very cosmopolitan city. And every 30 to 40 miles apart were these cities. And so this was the ancient circular route that was used by the ancient Romans and the people living in those areas as they traveled from trade area to trade area. And so the people at the time of John were very well acquainted with this because that's how things were communicated. And everybody in these areas got the message. Now, as we look at Revelation chapter 2 and 3, we find there's 7 messages. Now, I'm not going into those messages in detail. We'll save that for another time. What I want you to catch is the beautiful picture that is symbolized here. This trade route, we're going to start in Ephesus. I want you to imagine that we're going to go on a road trip. We're going to take our RV, or maybe we're going to walk and hike, maybe use a bike, and we're going to go from city to city around, just like they did in ancient times. We're not going to do a historical tour, but I want you to imagine that. So we're going to start in Ephesus, and the book of Revelation, chapter 1, describes Jesus as being in the center of the 7 candlesticks, which represent the 7 churches of those particular areas. Now, there was more than just one church in those cities. The message of Jesus Christ had exploded across the ancient world, and there was a lot of little churches around all of the main centers. But when the prophet sent the message out, he would gather the people together and read all of the messages. The messages of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 churches were read to everybody. And because when you study the messages through, you see that it was a very universal message. And those messages are really applicable for us to today. So as we look at that, and we're going to study the messages in a future time, basically it comes down to if the shoe fits, you wear it. So as we look at all of these churches, there's messages, but the message that we need to catch, first of all, is how it is represented in Revelation chapter 1. It describes Jesus, one like the Son of Man. That's going to be the topic of our next episode, the Son of Man. But we're going to look here at the picture that is given in Revelation chapter 1. Jesus is pictured standing among the 7 candlesticks, and he has in his hand 7 stars. The 7 stars are the angels of those churches. In other words, in heaven's eyes, in the unseen world that you and I can't see but is reality, God has a deep interest in each of these groups of people. And these groups of people who were seeking to follow God, he has an angel. The angels represent the divine influence, the divine force, the guidance, the direction of each person who has an angel assigned to them. You know, the Bible tells us that you and I have guardian angels. So here are these angels that are assigned to God, to these churches. So here's Jesus standing among the churches with the angels, the stars in his hand. And it pictures him as being intimately engaged with the activities and the experiences of each church. Okay, let's go take our little road trip together, our prophetic road trip. And as we're going along, we're looking at the possibilities of how Jesus is interacting with our lives. Okay, we come along with Ephesus. Ephesus, to the angel of the church of Ephesus, write, I know your works and your labor, your patience in that which you cannot bear, those who are evil. As you have that, and you have persevered and have patience and have labored for my name's sake and have not become weary. Nevertheless, I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent. To him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Now, let me pause for a second on this. The literary scholars tell us that the way in which these messages were crafted were intended to catch the attention and the seriousness of the message given. In many respects, it reflects the ancient Hebrew covenant pronouncements. So when a covenant was engaged with in ancient Judaism, it followed a form. There was a formal outline of how a covenant was given. And then in the Roman era, the non-Jewish world, there was the announcements that were made by the formal heralds about pronouncements coming from government. And some of the characteristics of these messages follow those characteristics. Why is that? The reason is, my friend, is that God was relating to these people in the messages and in the way that they understood. Folks, listen up. And so everybody had their attention caught. And so he gave those particular messages. The important thing to recognize at this point in time is that it was Jesus who was giving the messages through the angels to the prophet John, and it was being written from John and given to the 7 churches so that they might understand. We're not going to go into those messages in detail. So let's go on. We're going to go to the next church. We're going to Smyrna. And we find the same thing. The angel of the church in Smyrna write. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, I know your works, tribulation and poverty, but you're rich. Do not fear any of those things which you're about to suffer. Again, a personalized message from Jesus to that church. Going on, we move to Pergamum, and we find here Jesus is among the candlesticks. He's with the churches. He has the angels right in his hand. You can't imagine something that's more intimate and personalized than this. And to Pergamum, to the angel of the church in Pergamos write, I know your works and you hold fast to my name and did not deny my faith, even in the days in which Antipas was my faithful martyr. Somebody by the name of Antipas was actually martyred because of his faith and loyalty to Jesus Christ. Kind of reminds you back in Daniel chapter 3, the burning fiery furnace. And so we go on. We come to Thyatira on our little road trip here. And to the angel of the church in Thyatira, I know your works, love, service, faith, and your patience. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. Again, a personalized message. I know your works. I know your situation. I will give you some personal guidance and direction. So we go from Thyatira to Sardis. And the message in Sardis was, the angel of the church in Sardis, I know your works, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain. Again, the condition of that particular group of people was intimately known by Jesus, and he's giving a personal message for that. We go from there to Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, we find another personalized message. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. It's where the city of Philadelphia in the United States, in that huge important city was named after this particular name in the Bible. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, I know your works. See, I've set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. Again, another personalized message. And so we move on here to Laodicea on our little road trip. Imagine you're on a bicycle or walking, or better yet, in an RV. We're coming to Laodicea. And to the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, I know your works, that you are neither hot nor cold. So here are the 7 churches. But what I want us to catch here is Jesus is in the midst of the 7 churches. It is Jesus who is in the middle of history. It is Jesus in these messages which are universal and apply to Christians and God followers all through the ages. It is Jesus who is right there with his people, just like he was with those 3 Hebrew men in ancient Babylon. He's with his church today. So, what is the lesson? Jesus is with his people, and he is our security. Now, friend, here we come down to the experiences of life. We live as people have lived in all eras of life. Oh yes, the circumstances are different and the way it is manifested is different, and the economic situations, the technological conditions are totally different. I recognize that. But you think about sickness and loneliness, the challenges with addictions, abuse, poverty, business loss of career, aging, broken family relationships, divorce, insecurity, fear of climate change, war, famine, persecution. You can go on the horrible list that is in our world today. All of those things, my friend, are things that can cause you and me insecurity. And where is our security? Oh, some people would say, throw out the government. We don't say that. The Bible tells us that the government is established by God as long as it is in harmony with the teachings of the Bible. Some people would say, oh, go get a pile of gold coins, silver coins. We need bullion. And other people, oh man, let's build an underground root house or a shelter, and let's pack away just as much food as we can so we could live for 10 years without having to go to the grocery store. I don't know. Go on, everybody's with this. Survivalism is taken as the basis of security. But friends, the Bible here is telling us in these experiences of the burning fiery furnace and the experience of the 7 churches and Jesus being pictured among them, he is telling us that the security that you and I have is fundamentally and ultimately found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. It is in the confidence that we have with him in a personal relationship that is the foundation of security. Now think with me about that in another way. God gives amazing gifts to people. There are some people who have got an incredible gift in science. They become outstanding and stellar in their scientific accomplishments. Others are phenomenally blessed in their business acumen and in making money. All of those things, my friends, are gifts from God. And wonderful. If you got those gifts and any other of those wonderful gifts, wonderful. But at the end of the day, when aging occurs and our friends begin to pass, and we find our knees are aching, and there's the discovery of cancer or some other disease, it really doesn't matter how much you've got in your stock portfolio. And when you come down at the end of the day, if you don't have friends that stand by you, and a loving spouse and loving children, and you're alone, and you're looking the specter of going to sleep for eternity, what really is important? It's the friendship that you have with family. Family, and when I use the term family, I'm not only referring here to the marital or biological relationship. I'm talking about the people who are close to us, the people who support us, who love us. It is that security that gives us the greatest contentment and satisfaction in our lives. And friend, it is Jesus Christ, who is God himself, who is pictured in prophecy as being with his people. I mean, with me, with you. It is that bond of relationship that is the most profound sense of security that any one of us can possibly have in our hearts and lives. And it is, when you look down this catalog of horrible experiences which characterize our world, it is God who is the ultimate security in our lives. God is with us in our daily battles. Now let's look at this in a slightly different way. Prophecy shows us what a genuine relationship with God is really like. And I want to linger on that for a moment. Prophecy shows us what a genuine relationship with God is really like. Let's face it, religion is a big business in our world. Whether you come from a Christian background or more of the Eastern philosophical or religious backgrounds, or maybe some of the animistic traditions of Oceania or Africa or wherever, religion is a big business. And let's face it, sometimes there is some huge hypocrisy. People get turned off. Here in Western Canada, province of British Columbia, more than 50% of the people have absolutely no religious affiliation. Why? Why? Well, many of us have come from a situation, say, if whatever that is, and if that is authentic, genuine relationship with God, I don't want anything of it. I don't want anything to do with it. And we see hypocrisy. We have some people saying, oh, give me money. No, don't give money. Give money to God, but the money comes to me. And so I need it for my fleet of cars, my fancy mansion. It's a prosperity gospel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abedo, when they're thrown into the burning fiery furnace, let me tell you, my friend, there was no physical, monetary prosperity in that one. That kind of a theology, that kind of a religion, that doesn't hold up, doesn't match reality. And there's some people who say, oh, if you just have enough faith, you will be healed and you won't have cancer, you won't have whatever, heart disease. Now, friend, please don't misunderstand me. The Bible teaches the importance of faith. It gives us strong evidence for faith. But simply because I pray, prayer is not a vending machine that says if I chug in enough prayer and I, deposit enough prayer dollars, so to speak, into the machine, I'll get what I want. No, that's not faith. That's not the faith that those three worthies had, my friend. So what is authentic? What is genuine? The reason God gives us in prophecy these pictures of the three guys in the burning fiery furnace and the Jesus walking among the 7 churches is to help us to understand what is authentic. Because a relationship with God is where you and I base our values and our decisions on the unseen, which has revealed itself through Jesus Christ and in the teachings of the Scriptures. Let me put it this way. In our era, truth, in our times, truth is regarded as relative. It's based on existentialist feelings. If I think it's right, it's right. And my feelings are equal to your feelings, which are equal to their feelings, then everything is right. There's this concept of equality based on relativism, based on existentialism. Truth is subjective to me. And if you don't believe that there's any God, then anything becomes possible. Anything becomes possible. Any behavior, any set of ethics becomes possible. Now, please don't misunderstand me. There's many, many wonderful atheist, secular, agnostic people who are more moral in their lifestyle practice than many so-called followers of God. You don't have to necessarily believe in God to be a moral person. But my friend, the basis of our society is increasingly based on existentialism. If it feels right to me, that's good enough. That's all I need. But in the Bible and in prophecy, notice, as a follower of God, truth is defined by Jesus and by what and how He has revealed Himself. Truth is objective in Jesus as revealed in the Bible. You see, my friend, when we talk about truth as an objective external standard by which I judge my life, it is the revelation of God's will that has been done through Jesus Christ, through this way in which God has operated through history, that is the foundation of truth according to God, according to the eternal Almighty God. And so in our world today, just as in the time of Daniel, just as in the time of John, truth is being regarded as either existentialist or relative, whatever I feel is right is okay with me. You don't need to tell me that I'm wrong because it's right for me. But as a God follower, as a follower of the Almighty Eternal Creator God, truth is defined by Jesus and how Jesus has chosen to reveal himself in the Bible and in nature. It's all consistent, it's congruent, and God is inviting you and me to find our security in a relationship with God. How do we do that? Well, you can have security in an insecure world by coming into a relationship with God. Now, friend, please notice here, I assume in this discussion here that you are a beginner. Maybe you come from an agnostic atheist background. God takes every one of us, step by step, he leads us along. But here's how you can have a genuine relationship with God. Get to know Jesus. Read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Study his life. You might not have an understanding of the life of Jesus Christ, but friend, think about this person called Jesus Christ. A Galilean peasant who traveled no more than 90 miles away from where he was born, who, believe it or not, never wrote a book that was left for us, who was a tradesman. He was a carpenter. And yet that individual has had such an incredibly profound influence on this life. Get to know the life and the historicity of Jesus Christ. Start with the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and get to know about him if that's your beginning. Now, maybe you've known a lot about Jesus Christ, and that's wonderful, but get to know him. From my experience, I was born and raised in a wonderful, godly Christian home. I, so to speak, grew up on all of those particular stories of the Bible, and it was great. But my friend, it wasn't until I got a book that was a biography of Jesus Christ. The biography is called the book Desire of Ages. Until I really began to read that slowly and reflect on what it meant, and I found God operating in my life, that I woke up into an experience with God, and that changed and transformed me. You need to get to know Jesus personally. Number 2, pray. And you say, well, how do you pray? Do you have to have some little formula and you read whatever the case may be? No. Prayer is talking to God as to a friend. Talk to him as a friend. I talk to God. I pray all the time when I'm in the car. Not because of the crazy drivers that are around me. I pray to God. I talk to him as if he was alive and sitting in the seat beside me, or whatever else I'm doing. Talk to God, and then take time for formal prayer. One of the most important things you can do, which might be helpful for some of you, is to note some of the things that you're praying for. What does your family need? What does your work need? What do your friends need? And you begin to see unusual fulfillments of your prayer in those life experiences. For me, that was one of the aha experiences as I began to see some very unusual things happen as I was taking note. Number 3, learn more about God's way. There's a lot that you can learn. In nature, you see the harmony and the beauty of nature. That's revealing what God is like. There's a lot of materials available on YouTube, videos, sermons, music. Godly Christian music is a wonderful blessing, etc. My point is this, is get to know God in all of these different ways and make it a goal to implement. Obey what you've learned. What would Jesus do in my circumstances? You see, friend, this comes down to a practical learning that genuine, authentic religion is not just a theory. It is a reality in our lives. And how do you do that? You begin implementing what you may have discovered and learned. I'm reminded of this statement of a very, very well-known writer. His name was Oswald Chambers. Some of you, many of you may know his book called My Utmost for His Highest. He was a Scottish Baptist teacher and chaplain. And he explained, I think, very, very well about the whole relationship of how we actually learn and realize, particularly divine inspiration. He wrote, all God's revelations are sealed to us until they are opened to us by obedience. You will never get them open by philosophy or thinking. Immediately you obey, a flash of light comes. Let God's truth work in you by soaking in it, not by worrying into it. Obey God in the thing He is at present showing you, and instantly the next thing is opened up. We read tomes, that's many books, on the work of the Holy Spirit, when 5 minutes of drastic obedience would make things clear as a sunbeam. We say, I suppose I shall understand these things someday. You can understand them now. It is not study that does it, but obedience. The tiniest fragment of obedience, and heaven opens up, and the profoundest truths of God are yours straight away. God will never reveal more truth about Himself till you obey what you know already. Beware of being wise and prudent in the sense of rejecting the simplicity of following His will. So what are we saying here, friend? What is the bottom line? We all of us are in different ways faced with the issue of how do I deal with being loyal and faithful with God? Is God really with me? Imagine those 3 young men on the plains of Dura. They didn't feel like God was with them. But when they came to the test, there was the form of the 4th. God was with them. And likewise, God is with you and me. Friend, what I really want to share with you in this episode is the wonderful fulfillment and security that comes from knowing that God is with us in a personal, daily, ongoing relationship. We all are faced with different tests. We all are in different furnaces of affliction. But God is with us. If you're a single mom wondering how to pay the rent, get enough food for your kids, and you're struggling just to make things happen in your home and you don't have a helper, your partner, your husband, wife, to help you, God's with you. Are you a businessman and you're facing financial reverses and you're challenged? God is with you, friend. Are you dealing with an addiction? Maybe fentanyl or heroin or something like that? My friend, God can and He will deliver you if you will come to Him. What about tobacco? What about broken relationships? Oh, friend, we need to know that God, and we can know that He is with us at all times, walking, talking, guiding our minds, educating our thoughts, so that we are doing what He would have us do. I encourage you today to trust in God. Trust that Jesus is with you. Get to know Him. Claim what you discover in nature, in the Bible. Build your life on an experience with God. And you'll find your life will be transformed, and you will have a sense of security in your life that is unshakable. Okay, so our time is up. Our next episode, Son of Man. Discover the Son of Man and discover the hero of Daniel and Revelation. You're going to discover more about prophecy in our next episode as we go through the Gospels, as we go through Daniel and Revelation. You're going to discover some fantastic things about this expression called the Son of Man. Thanks for being with us, and God bless.